They thought Zaria Coleman was just another quiet black girl they could slap around in the hallway, until the hallway learned she wasn't the one to play with. One hit from the school's golden boy bully, and 5 minutes later she walked back with something no apology could fix. A full beehive humming like vengeance. The moment she shoved it into his face, the screams echoed louder than his ego. And trust me, what happens after will make you question everything about school justice. The hallway of Crestwood High pulsed with noise as the bell rang for the next period. Lockers slammed shut, sneakers screeched across the tiles, and laughter bounced off the walls like ricocheting bullets. But everything shifted the moment Chase Barlow planted himself in the center of the hallway, broad shoulders squared, varsity jacket half-zipped like he owned the oxygen around him. His crew, Reed, Mason, Tyler, and Jax, fanned out behind him, forming a wall of arrogance tinted orange and white. Zaria Coleman had been walking quietly, hugging her books to her chest, trying her best to stay invisible in a place that made invisibility impossible. Her dark braids brushed her backpack straps as she moved, eyes fixed straight ahead. She didn't want trouble. She didn't want attention. She only wanted to get to biology before the next wave of stares and whispers swallowed her again. But trouble always found girls like her. Chase stepped directly into her path, forcing her to stop. "Well, well," he drawled loudly, loud enough to draw the attention of everyone within 20 lockers. "If it isn't the new little charity case." Zaria didn't respond. Her face stayed still, unreadable. Chase leaned closer, pretending to squint at her skin. "Damn, you're darker than the hallway lights," he mocked, and his crew burst into laughter. Phones came up immediately, always ready, always hungry for humiliation content. "Say something," Chase demanded, stepping even closer. His breath smelled like mint gum and ego. "Come on, make this fun." Zaria's fingers tightened on her books, but her expression never changed. Calm, silent, controlled. And that only enraged him further. Without warning, smack. Chase's hand whipped across her face, the sound slicing through every conversation in the hallway. The laughter that followed felt like a wave crashing over her shoulders, cold and stinging. Someone yelled, "Yo!" He slapped the life out of her. Another recorded from just a few feet away, zooming in on Zaria's cheek as it reddened. But Zaria didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't even step back. Instead, she slowly lifted her face, eyes locking onto Chase's. They were not watery. They were not frightened. They were sharp, cold, dangerous in a way Chase didn't understand but instinctively felt. It was the look of someone doing math in their head, someone making calculations, someone choosing a response far more precise than any slap. For the first time since the bell rang, Chase hesitated. Reed nudged him. "Bro, hit her again. The camera's rolling." But Chase couldn't look away from her eyes. Something about them made his chest tighten, not with guilt, but with a flicker of fear he refused to name. Up above, unnoticed by the cheering crowd, a small red light blinked on the hallway ceiling. The security camera, clean, angled perfectly, had recorded every second of his assault. The slap, the words, the laughter, his face, his hand, everything. Zaria noticed it. Zaria always noticed everything. She took one small step closer, her voice quiet enough that only Chase and the microphone on the ceiling could hear her. "You have 5 minutes left to enjoy that laugh." Chase blinked. "What?" But Zaria didn't repeat herself. She simply turned away, the hallway parting around her as if her silence carried weight. Behind her, the crowd kept laughing. Chase tried to laugh too, though it came out thinner than before. Zaria walked with calm, controlled steps, every second ticking louder in her mind. 5 minutes. That was all she needed. Zaria's countdown begins as she heads straight toward the science wing. Zaria didn't look back as she left the chaos behind. The hallway noise faded into a dull roar, swallowed by the narrower, colder corridor leading toward the science wing. The fluorescent lights here hummed louder, flickering slightly like they sensed the storm forming in her chest. She passed the last cluster of lockers, turning the corner sharply, vanishing from the sightlines of the students still buzzing about the slap that had rocked Crestwood High. There were no laughing spectators here, no phones raised, no cruel voices chasing her footsteps, just the echo of her shoes against the linoleum and the rhythmic countdown in her head. 4 minutes left. Her jaw throbbed where Chase's hand had landed, but she didn't touch it. Pain wasn't her priority. Precision was. She reached the double doors of the biology department. A sign taped crookedly beside the frame read "Authorized personnel only." But Zarya pushed the doors open without hesitation. The sterile smell of ethanol and plant preservatives filled the hallway, grounding her. As she approached the back room, a familiar voice called out, "Zarya, what are you doing here?" Miss Alvarez, the biology teacher, stepped out of Lab 2, holding a clipboard. She adjusted her glasses, confused. "Aren't you supposed to be in class?" Zarya paused only long enough to show respect. "I need to get justice." Her tone was calm, too calm, and that unnerved Alvarez more than any raised voice ever could. "What kind of fairness is that?" the teacher began. But Zarya was already moving again. She pushed open the door to the experimental storage room. The lights flickered on automatically, revealing rows of metal shelves lined with specimen jars, soil samples, microscopes, and something else. A low, steady hum filled the air. Beekeeping chambers, 12 enclosed glass cases, each containing different hive structures used for the school's ecological behavior studies. Some were small, some medium-sized. But on the far left shelf sat the largest one, a broad, oval-shaped hive with a deep golden-brown surface, the kind of hived structure seasoned beekeepers could read like a storybook. Zarya's breathing steadied, plot twist activated. Most students avoided this room. Even some teachers refused to touch the bee research units. But Zarya? She had grown up around hives. She knew how bees moved, how they communicated, how they reacted to sound, vibration, temperature, and fear. Her father had taught her how to gain their respect instead of their aggression. She approached the shelf, running her eyes along the labels until she found the one she needed. Apis mellifera. High Activity Cluster. Behavior Study #4. High Activity. Perfect. The hive inside pulsed with life, a soft vibration she could feel even through the glass. Zarya lifted the latches one by one, her hands steady. She pulled open the compartment's protective casing. Just then, the door opened behind her. "Zarya, wait, what are you doing with that hive?" Miss Alvarez asked, alarm creeping into her voice. Zarya turned her head slightly. "I'm taking back what he took from me." "That's dangerous," Alvarez insisted. "The research hives are perfect." Zarya cut in, closing the protective latch around the hive's travel panel. "Exactly what I need." There was nothing more to explain. She reached for the thick pair of beekeeping gloves on the counter. They were slightly oversized, meant for the teacher demonstrations, but they would do. She slid them on, lifted the hive carefully with both hands, and for a second, just a second, a faint smile touched her lips. Not of joy, of clarity. 3 minutes left. Alvarez took a step forward. "Zarya, please at least tell me what happened." Zarya looked at her with calm, unwavering eyes. Someone crossed a line. Before the teacher could respond, Zarya turned, pushing the door open with her shoulder. The hum of the hive vibrated softly through her gloves, almost approvingly. She stepped into the hallway as the hive door behind her slid shut, and with a single motion, she opened the cabinet fully, revealing the large golden-brown hive glowing under the room's white lights. She lifts the hive firmly, ready to return to the main hallway. The hallway behind the science wing was silent, eerily so. The air felt cooler here, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath while Zarya walked with the hive secured in her gloved hands. Her footsteps echoed sharply against the linoleum, rhythmic and unbroken. She didn't hesitate. She didn't falter. She moved with purpose, like someone retracing a path she already knew by heart. But inside her mind, memories flickered like old film reels cutting into the present. 2 minutes left. Zarya inhaled slowly, steadying the vibration of the hive against her palms. Bees responded to emotion, panic, anger, fear. They absorbed it all. But calm they respected. Her father had taught her that long before Crestwood High ever learned her name, bees follow balance. Her father's deep voice echoed in her head. Your heartbeat matters to them. Your breathing. Your intention. You don't control them, Zarya. You communicate. She could still picture the warm glow of the Coleman family apiary, rows of wooden hives stretching across the field behind their old farmhouse. Sunlight glimmered through honey frames like stained glass. She was only 9 the first time she held a hive without trembling. Her father had stood behind her, hands steady on her shoulders. You'll need this someday, he had said. She never imagined someday would look like this. Zarya's grip tightened slightly. She could feel the hive's internal rhythm alive, pulsing, reactive. She whispered softly under her breath, a habit she'd never outgrown. Easy, I've got you. The buzzing softened, syncing with her steady pace. She turned another corner, her heartbeat aligning with the hum. But the past kept pressing forward, weaving itself into every step she took. She remembered the competitions, the auditorium lights, the shock on the judges' faces as she demonstrated how bees responded predictably to sound patterns she had engineered. While other students made volcanoes and posters, she created a biobehavior algorithm that allowed her to speak to hives using controlled frequencies. The headline still lived online somewhere. 14-year-old girl wins National Science Award for unlocking behavioral modulation in bees. The reporters had called her a prodigy. Her father called her a protector. Zarya exhaled slowly, blinking back to the present. The hive warmed slightly under her gloves, sensing her sharpened focus. She knew exactly what she was doing, what she intended, what message she needed to send. Chase Barlow had no idea who he had slapped in that hallway, no idea what kind of fire he had struck, no idea how many years of training, discipline, and quiet resilience sat beneath Zarya's calm exterior. She rounded another corner. The distant noise from the main hallway grew louder. Laughter, shouting, someone replaying the slap on their phone. The sound hit her chest like a cold wind. Her jaw clenched not from pain, but from determination. Her father's voice surfaced one last time, soft but resolute. Justice requires courage, not anger, clarity, and clarity was all Zarya had. She adjusted her grip on the hive, keeping it level as she walked faster. With each step, her calm sank deeper, steady and commanding. Bees responded to strength, not brute force, but internal stillness, and she carried more stillness than anyone realized. A bitter smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Half whisper, half thought. Chase doesn't know who he just messed with. The hallway lights hummed overhead as if agreeing. The sounds of chaos from the main hallway swell louder. Zarya is almost there. The main hallway of Crestwood High was louder than ever. The slap had become the story of the hour, a fresh piece of entertainment fed into the school's endless appetite for humiliation. Students crowded near the varsity lockers, buzzing like they were at a pep rally rather than the scene of an assault. And at the center of it all stood Chase Barlow. His varsity jacket gleamed under the fluorescent lights, his grin stretched wide across his face. He slapped Reed's shoulder as he reenacted the moment with exaggerated flair. I swear to God, bro. She just stood there. Chase boasted, throwing his hand in the air. Did you see her face? Like she didn't even know what hit her. Mason let out a barking laugh. Man, that slap echoed. I felt that from here. Tyler chimed in, replaying the video on his phone for the 15th time. Look at this angle, bro. Look. You sent her soul out her body. Jax leaned back against the lockers, arms crossed, smirking. New girl learned fast, Crestwood don't play. The boys erupted in laughter again, loud and unrestrained, slapping each other's backs as if celebrating a touchdown. Several students nearby lifted their phones discreetly, tilting them ever so slightly toward Chase, capturing every moment of his bragging. Screens glowed, whispers spread. The humiliation traveled like wildfire. Chase basked in it, He loved the attention. He lived off it. He lifted his chin proudly. Man, someone better check on her. She probably ran home to cry to her mom. Reed snorted. Or she transferred already. More laughter, more noise, more cruelty. The hallway vibrated with energy, loud, reckless, confident, the kind of confidence belonging only to someone who had never faced consequences a single day in his life. But consequences were already on their way. Just not the kind he expected. As Chase leaned forward to snatch Tyler's phone for another replay, something small drifted past his face, swift, silent, and shimmering under the hallway light. A bee. A single honeybee glided gently through the air, its wings humming softly as it hovered right in front of Chase's nose. Chase froze. What the? He swatted instinctively, stumbling backward. Reed blinked. Bro, was that a bee? A few nearby students stepped away, murmuring, confused. The bee circled once, lazily, then drifted off toward the far end of the hallway, almost like it was waiting for something. Or someone. Chase rubbed his nose aggressively. Man, why's there a bee in school? Stupid science nerds probably left something open. Mason shrugged. Who cares? Where's that girl anyway? Thought she'd come cry or something. Reed scanned the hallway, frowning slightly. Wait. Yeah, where is she? Zarya just disappeared. She was right here 5 minutes ago. Chase scoffed, rolling his eyes. Probably hiding in the bathroom. But Reed didn't look convinced. The bee, the silence from Zarya, the way she hadn't reacted to the slap, something felt off. Reed muttered under his breath, slipping into confusion. Where is Zarya? Why did she suddenly disappear? The group grew quieter. An odd shift swept through the hallway, the kind of shift that made lockers seem taller, lights seem dimmer, and air feel thicker. Then footsteps, slow, steady, deliberate. Click, click, click. Coming from the far end of the hallway, students turned, heads lifted, conversations faltered. There, emerging from the corner, was a silhouette carrying something large in gloved hands. Zarya Coleman. And she wasn't trembling. She wasn't crying. She wasn't broken. She was calm, too calm. The bee from earlier circled once above her shoulder, like a scout announcing her arrival. Chase swallowed hard. The hallway stills as Zarya steps forward, the hive in her hands humming louder with every step. The hallway, just seconds ago, a chaotic carnival of noise, fell into a rippling hush the moment Zarya stepped into view. Conversations thinned. Laughter broke off mid-sentence. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to hum quieter as heads turned toward the girl, walking with slow, deliberate steps. Zarya Coleman moved through the crowd like she was parting water. Her expression was unreadable, calm, centered, terrifying in its stillness. Students watched with wide eyes as she advanced, her gloved hands hidden behind her back, holding something no one could see. Whispers darted through the hallway like sparks. Is that her? What's she holding? Bro, why is she so calm? Did she come back to fight him? Chase Barlow's smug grin twitched just slightly when he finally registered her presence. The bravado faltered for a second, a crack just wide enough to expose the flicker of fear underneath. But Chase couldn't be seen afraid. Not here. Not in front of his crew. Not after bragging like a king 5 minutes earlier. He squared his shoulders, adjusted his varsity jacket, and stepped forward boldly, puffing himself back up. "Oh, look!" he shouted, voice booming through the hallway. Charity Case came back. Reed snickered. Mason smirked. Tyler lifted his phone instinctively, ready to record round 2. Jax leaned against the lockers, folding his arms with a smirk that said this would be entertainment. Zarya didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't break eye contact. Her silence struck harder than any insult she could have thrown. Chase took another step, now only a few feet away from her. The crowd pressed in closer, their sneakers squeaking against the tile, the air thick with anticipation. "You done running?" Chase taunted, spreading his arms wide. "Do you want me to slap you again?" The crowd reacted with a mixed gasp, some shocked, some thrilled, some horrified. The words echoed through the hallway, bouncing off lockers and lockers and lockers until they carved themselves into the moment. Zarya's expression didn't change, but something in the atmosphere did. The hallway felt tighter, the air heavier, the silence more dangerous. Chase raised his chin defiantly. "Come on, say something. Cry, beg, do something." Zarya finally moved. Slowly, deliberately. She shifted her weight, bringing the object hidden behind her back into view. Students leaned forward, craning their necks, trying to see what she had been holding. Her gloved fingers curled around a rounded shape, a shape that hummed softly, a shape that vibrated faintly, a shape every student recognized from science class, but never expected to see here. Zarya lifted her arm and revealed a large, golden-brown beehive, dense and alive with movement. Gasps exploded across the hallway. Is that a real hive? Oh my God, she's crazy. No way, no way. Chase stumbled half a step back before catching himself, trying to mask the instinctive fear surging up his spine. But it was too late. Everyone saw it. Zarya's voice cut through the silence, low and razor-sharp. "Let's see who hurts more." Her words struck like a blade, quiet, controlled, lethal. The hive vibrated in her hands, the soft buzz rising in pitch as if sensing the shift in energy, responding to the tension around it. Chase's throat bobbed as he swallowed. For the first time all day, he didn't have a comeback ready. His smirk faltered, his shoulders stiffened, and his foot slid back one step, a reflex he couldn't hide. Zarya's eyes locked onto the movement, unblinking. Chase's unexpected retreat only fuels the tension. Zarya steps forward, the hive humming louder with every inch. The hallway, packed shoulder to shoulder with students, vibrated with a tension that felt almost electric. Every breath, every whisper, every shuffle of sneaker rubber against tile echoed as if amplified. The fluorescent lights above flickered, humming in uneven pulses, casting sharp white reflections across the polished floor. The crowd had transformed into a ring tight, breathless, hungry for whatever came next. And in the center of it all stood Zarya Coleman holding a beehive. Chase Barlow's confidence was cracking, even as he tried desperately to claw it back. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched and unclenched. His eyes darted between Zarya's face and the hive, as if unsure which one posed the greater threat. Reed whispered behind him, "Bro, is that even legal?" Mason grimaced. "She wouldn't actually open it, right?" Tyler's hands trembled slightly as he held up his phone. "Oh, she's about to do something insane," Jax muttered. "I knew she was weird, but this is next level." But Zarya didn't look at them. Her attention was fixed entirely on Chase. The hive in her hands vibrated softly alive, restless, on the edge of awakening. Zarya felt it. She felt the rhythm, the energy, the readiness. She inhaled slowly, letting her heart settle into a steady beat. Then, without breaking eye contact with Chase, she placed her thumb on the small latch built into the hive's upper casing. A few students screamed quietly, others grabbed their friends' sleeves. The air thickened with panic. "Don't!" Chase barked, voice cracking before he could stop it. He immediately straightened up, trying to mask the slip. "I mean, go ahead. I'm not scared." But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Zarya tilted her head, almost sympathetic but not quite. "You should be." And then she twisted the latch. A soft click, followed by a low, swelling hum. The hive lid shifted open just a fraction, just enough to disturb the cluster inside. The buzzing rose instantly, deepening into a resonant vibration that rippled through the entire hallway. Students gasped. Chase flinched. Phones jerked upward. "What is she doing?" someone cried. "Oh, hell no. I'm allergic, move," another yelled, pushing backward. But Zarya remained perfectly still, as if rooted to the floor by sheer will. Inside the hive, the bees reacted exactly as she knew they would. Her father had taught her this technique years ago, how to stimulate a hive using just the right combination of motion and air pressure, so they emerged alert but not enraged. And most importantly, how to guide them. Ignited. The bees surged forward, forming a swirling, tightening cluster, searching for vibration, for sound, for movement. And Chase had just shouted the loudest sound in the hallway. The hive shifted in Zaria's grip as the bees moved toward the opening. Chase stumbled back, panic seizing him. "Close it! Close it right now!" His bravado evaporated instantly. His crew stared at him, eyes wide, mouths open. No one moved to help him. Zaria stepped closer, her voice a whisper sharp enough to slice through his fear. A whisper meant only for him and the hive's restless inhabitants. "My turn." Chase froze. His breathing quickened. His face drained of color. His foot slid back again, another instinctive retreat he couldn't mask, no matter how desperately he tried. The hive continued to buzz, louder and louder, as bees crowded toward the small opening like soldiers assembling behind a gate. The crowd held its breath. The lights hummed. Chase's throat clicked as he swallowed, and Zaria lifted the hive higher, then extended it slowly toward his face. The hive opens wider. Chase is seconds away from the consequences he never imagined. For one suspended second, the hallway held its breath. Then Zaria moved. It wasn't violent. It wasn't rushed. It was a simple, controlled push, just enough for the hive's open edge to make contact with Chase's cheek. But that was all it took. The hive vibrated sharply, then erupted. A tidal wave of bees surged forward, spilling out in a shimmering, terrifying cloud of wings and fury. They scattered for only a split second before locking onto the loudest, closest vibration. Chase. He didn't even scream at first. Shock froze him in place, eyes wide, mouth parted, breath caught in his throat. Then, reality hit. Stings, movement, buzzing against his ears, his lips, his eyelids. Chase's composure shattered instantly. "Triple ah! Get them off me!" he howled, swatting blindly at the swarm engulfing his face. His voice cracked as the bees tightened around him like a living mask. The hallway exploded into chaos. Students shrieked and scrambled backward. Lockers slammed open and shut as people ducked, ran, tripped over each other. Someone dropped their phone and kicked it by accident as they fled. Reed bolted behind a trash can. "Bro, I'm not dying today." Mason shielded his head with his backpack. "I'm allergic. I think I don't know move." Tyler held his phone up even as he ran, filming through trembling hands. "Oh my God! Oh my God! This is insane!" About his place state, Jax grabbed Chase's jacket from behind, hoping to pull him away but let go instantly when two bees veered toward him. "Nope, you're on your own, bro." They abandoned him, every single one of them. Chase stumbled down the hallway, arms flailing, knocking over a recycling bin as he crashed into lockers. Papers flew everywhere. A water bottle spilled, causing him to slip and slam into the wall, bees clinging to his face like a living shadow. Zaria didn't move. She simply stood among the chaos, the emptied hive in her gloved hands, expression calm, almost serene, her breathing steady, her eyes focused, and the crowd knew she had meant every second of this. Students backed away from her automatically, not out of fear of the bees those were already chasing Chase, but out of respect, awe, shock, the kind that rewrites reputations in an instant. One student, live streaming from the middle of the hallway, gasped into their phone mic. "Oh my God, she actually did it." The comments on the stream exploded, hearts and shocked emojis flooding the screen. Meanwhile, Chase crashed into the corner near the stairwell, screaming as he tried to outrun the swarm. His hands slapped uselessly at his face, only making the bees angrier. He tripped again and crawled a few steps on his knees before scrambling to his feet, eyes swollen, cheeks blotched, his voice breaking. "Help! Somebody help me!" But his friends stayed hidden. The crowd kept its distance. No one wanted to be the next target. The chaos reached boiling point. A locker door slammed open as someone used it as a shield. Students shouted over each other, trying to sprint toward exits. Some pressed themselves against the wall. Others ducked under benches. It was pure pandemonium, fear, noise, movement crashing against each other in every direction. And then a voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone step back! Move! Move! Teachers! Mr. Holland, the history teacher, shoved his way into the hallway, followed by Miss Alvarez and two hall monitors. Their eyes widened instantly at the sight. Chase stumbling, bees clouding his head, the students scattered like debris, and Zaria standing still in the eye of the storm. "Oh no, not the hive, Miss!" Alvarez yelled, horrified. Students shrieked even louder as the adults tried to push through the mess. Chase ran blindly toward the far exit, voice hoarse, every step a scream. Zaria lowered the empty hive gently to the floor. Her voice was calm, barely above a whisper, but audible to herself and just loud enough to mark the moment. More teachers rush in as full chaos erupts, authority collides with the truth caught on camera. The aftermath hit the hallway like a low, rolling thunder. The chaos began to thin as students scattered toward doorways, stairwells, and classrooms, anywhere they could escape the swarm and the shock of what they had just witnessed. The once packed hallway now looked like a scene left behind after a storm. Backpacks abandoned, papers strewn across the floor, lockers still hanging open. The buzzing faded. The screaming echoed farther away. In the center of it all stood Zaria still, composed, breathing steadily. Teachers flooded the scene from all directions. "Everyone move back," the hall monitor shouted, waving his arms. "Give us space." Two nurses sprinted down the hallway, pushing a portable emergency kit. They rushed past Zaria without a glance, heading straight for Chase, who now lay curled near the exit, barely recognizable beneath blotchy welts. His breathing was ragged, his eyes swollen nearly shut, and every inch of his face looked like a battlefield of stings. "Get him to the nurse's office now," one of the nurses commanded. As they lifted Chase onto a stretcher, the hallway erupted again, this time with murmurs, gasps, and half-whispered commentary. "That's what he gets. I have another as or no." He slapped her first. She didn't even scream. "Bro." She walked in like a supervillain. The attention, the power had shifted drastically. Just minutes ago, Chase had been the king of Crestwood High. Now he was the school's cautionary tale. And Zaria? No one knew what to call her anymore. Miss Alvarez approached cautiously, eyes darting between the hive on the floor and Zaria's calm expression. "Zaria, what did you do?" Her voice trembled not with anger, but disbelief. Before Zaria could answer, Mr. Holland interjected sharply. "We need to get statements, now." Students nearby were already playing back recordings on their phones. The slap, Chase's taunts, his bragging, and Zaria, standing completely still as he humiliated her. Miss Alvarez grabbed one student's phone. Her face hardened instantly. "It's all recorded," she said quietly. "He hit her, clearly, in front of everyone." "Mr. Holland leaned over her shoulder. "This is unmistakable." The shift was immediate. The conversation wasn't about Zaria anymore. It was about what Chase had done. Camera angles appeared from multiple students, each confirming the same story. Chase slapped her first, targeted her, mocked her. The swarm attack didn't come from nowhere. It came from a moment of retaliation brewed under pressure, humiliation, and racial aggression. But then came as Miss Alvarez stepped closer to the broken hive casing. She froze. Her eyebrows drew together as she crouched down, inspecting the frame, the density of the comb, the label partially torn on the side. "This," she whispered, tracing the markings with her fingertips. "This hive was missing last week. Someone reported it gone." Another teacher frowned. "Gone? As in stolen?" Miss Alvarez didn't answer immediately. She looked up slowly at Zaria, at the gloves still on her hands, at the precision with which she'd handled everything. Zaria's face remained unreadable, but her stillness only deepened the teacher's suspicion. "Zaria," Miss Alvarez said softly, "you knew exactly what you were doing with that hive, didn't you?" Zaria didn't nod. She didn't shake her head either. The silence answered for her. Before anyone could question her further, Mr. Holland clapped his hands sharply. "We're calling the parents. All of them. This needs to be handled formally." Several teachers nodded in agreement. A secretary jogged into the hallway with a clipboard. I've already notified the office. The principal wants immediate meetings with all involved students. Miss, Alvarez exhaled, pushing her glasses up the bridge of her nose. She wasn't angry, she was calculating. This is going to be complicated, she murmured. Students slowly began drifting away, still whispering, still replaying video clips, still buzzing with the energy of a spectacle none of them would forget. By the time the stretcher turned the corner, Chase's frantic screams had faded into muffled cries. Zaria watched quietly. And somewhere, across town, inside an office filled with case files and civil rights documents, Luther Coleman's phone began to ring. Zaria's father answers the call, and the school has no idea what storm they've just invited. The disciplinary boardroom at Crestwood High had never felt smaller. A long rectangular table dominated the center, its glossy surface reflecting the fluorescent lights overhead. Papers, incident reports, and a stack of printed screenshots cluttered one end. The air hung thick, part tension, part fear, part expectation. Zaria sat quietly on one side of the table, hands folded neatly in her lap. She wore no expression, no fear, no apology, just silence, so composed it made everyone else uneasy. Beside her sat her father, Luther Coleman, a tall man with sharp eyes and a calmness that carried weight. He said nothing, but his presence alone filled the room. His suit was crisp, his posture impeccable, and the briefcase at his feet looked more like a weapon than an accessory. Across the table sat Chase Barlow, face swollen, blotchy, wrapped in gauze, and his parents. Mrs. Barlow's eyes were inflamed with furious indignation. Mr. Barlow sat stiff, arms crossed, jaw locked in place. Their son twitched every few seconds whenever a phantom sting pricked him. At the head of the table stood Principal Maddox, stacks of paperwork in hand, doing his best to maintain authority in a room quickly slipping beyond his control. "Let's begin," Maddox said, clearing his throat. "We are here today to address the incident involving students Chase Barlow and Zaria Coleman." Mrs. Barlow slammed her palm on the table. "Incident? My son was attacked by a hive of bees." "Attacked? That girl could have blinded him. She needs to be expelled immediately." Chase winced at his mother's volume but nodded weakly. "Yeah, she tried to kill me." Principal Maddox attempted diplomacy. "We understand your concerns." "Bees, not concerns," Mr. Barlow snapped. "We're discussing a threat. That girl is unstable, dangerous. Who brings a beehive to school?" The accusation hung in the air. Zaria didn't react. Luther didn't blink. Mrs. Barlow pointed sharply. "We demand expulsion. Today." Principal Maddox hesitated. "We need to review all angles before making any—" "Review what?" Mrs. Barlow snapped. "The entire school saw it. She shoved a hive into my son's face." Finally, Luther Coleman leaned back in his chair, folding his hands calmly. He still said nothing. Mrs. Barlow scoffed. "Oh, now he's pretending he has nothing to say?" Luther's eyes lifted with slow precision, pinning her with a gaze so steady she involuntarily swallowed. "I speak," he said softly, "when there is something worth saying." Principal Maddox shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Coleman, you will have your chance to—" "Oh, he's had his chance." "Mrs. Barlow snapped. "Your daughter assaulted my son." Luther finally leaned forward, voice quiet but razor-sharp. "Your son assaulted my daughter first." Silence rippled across the room. Mrs. Barlow threw her hands up. "There's no proof." A slow smile tugged at the corner of Luther's mouth. "That," he said, reaching down to his briefcase, "is exactly why I'm here." He produced a small silver USB drive and placed it carefully in the center of the table. The metallic click as it hit the wood sounded like a gun being cocked. Principal Maddox blinked. "What? Is this footage?" Luther said. 6 months' worth of hallway and gym floor camera recordings. Every incident of bullying committed by Chase Barlow. Every slur, every shove, every assault the school failed to report. Chase's parents stiffened. Chase paled under the swelling. Maddox's face drained of color. 6 months? Luther nodded. I'm prepared to forward this to the district, the superintendent, and if necessary, the press. Mrs. Barlow sputtered. This is ridiculous. Today, Luther said slowly, leaning closer, we're not just talking about a slap. Every person in the room froze. The weight of the sentence settled like concrete. The air turned cold. No one moved. No one breathed. The rules had flipped. The power dynamics shifted. The truth entered the room, and it was merciless. The room falls into a suffocating silence as the footage begins to play. The disciplinary room felt colder as the USB clicked into the laptop. A hush fell over everyone present. Outside the door, a crowd of students pressed their faces to the glass window, breath fogging the surface. They didn't want to miss a moment. Word had spread across Crestwood High like wildfire. Chase is getting exposed. Principal Maddox hesitated before pressing play, but Luther's steady gaze left him no escape. The screen lit up, and the room's atmosphere fractured. The first clip showed Chase in the sophomore hallway, shoving a smaller Latino student into lockers as his friends laughed. "Speak English, man," Chase jeered, knocking the kid's books across the floor. Mrs. Barlow's mouth fell open. "Chase?" Clip 2. The cafeteria. Chase dumped a black girl's lunch tray over her head while students watched silently. "Oops," he sneered. My hand slipped. Mr. Barlow inhaled sharply, color draining from his cheeks. Clip 3. Locker room footage. Chase ripping a notebook apart and tossing the pieces into the showers while a terrified freshman begged him to stop. "Maybe this will teach you not to touch my stuff," Chase said. Clip 4. Chase kicking the crutches out from under an injured student. The boy fell hard. Chase walked away laughing. Mrs. Barlow covered her mouth. This can't be real." But it was only the beginning. The USB contained dozens of clips, some grainy, some shockingly clear. A pattern emerged. Cruelty disguised as dominance, bigotry disguised as jokes, violence disguised as boys being boys. Always the same smirk, always the same swagger, always the same cheers from his entourage. Students outside the door gasped, whispering fiercely, "Yo, he did that. That's messed up. I knew he bullied people, but not like this," Bros finished. Inside the room, the collapse was visible. Chase shrank in his seat, face twitching with shame and panic beneath the swelling. His bravado had evaporated completely. Not even his parents could defend him now. Mrs. Barlow's voice cracked. "Chase, why didn't you tell us?" He didn't answer. Mr. Barlow leaned back, hand trembling against his forehead. "We raised you better than this." Principal Maddox watched with a tightening jaw. Clip after clip exposed not just Chase, but the administration's failure. He recognized dates, times, students, incidents that should have been reported but never reached his desk. Or perhaps he had ignored warnings he didn't want to deal with. Luther Coleman's calm voice cut through the suffocating silence. "I requested the footage weeks ago, when my daughter first mentioned feeling unsafe in your school, Principal Maddox." Maddox swallowed hard. I was unaware of the extent." "No," Luther said softly but firmly. "You didn't look." The shame rippled across Maddox's face. The room had turned into both a courtroom and a confession chamber. The final clip appeared on the screen taken just 90 minutes earlier. Chase slapping Zaria with full force. The laughter. The taunts. The gleeful cheering of his friends, and Zaria, standing still, refusing to break. Mrs. Barlow burst into tears. Chase stared at the table, unable to lift his head. Then Luther spoke the words that sealed the moment. "Chase Barlow is not a victim. He is a predator." Silence swallowed the room, and outside the glass, students froze, eyes widening as if they had just witnessed a crown being ripped off the school's unofficial king. Principal Maddox reached slowly for a disciplinary form. His voice wavered slightly. "We need to draft an official sanction. This level of sustained aggression cannot go unpunished. Suspension won't be enough." Mr. Barlow didn't argue. Mrs. Barlow didn't speak. Chase didn't lift his head. Power had shifted. Justice had entered. The truth had stripped every layer of protection Chase once hid behind. The disciplinary verdict begins taking shape, one that will change everything for every student involved. The small auditorium was filled to capacity long before the disciplinary panel took their seats. Word had spread across Crestwood High faster than any rumor, exam, gossip, or scandal the school had ever seen. Chase Barlow is getting judged today. Students packed themselves into rows of folding chairs. Teachers lined the walls. Clipboards clutched tightly, faces tense with anticipation. The buzz of whispers rippled through the room, creating a low, vibrating murmur that never quite settled. At the front, a long table draped in the school's navy and gold banner served as the bench for the disciplinary board. Principal Maddox sat in the center, flanked by 2 senior teachers and a district representative brought in after the USB footage had detonated through the administration like a bomb. Zaria sat quietly at the far left side of the room. She remained composed, hands folded, posture straight, eyes steady. She looked neither triumphant nor frightened, just resolute. On the opposite side sat Chase Barlow. His face was still swollen from the stings, gauze taped unevenly across one cheek. His parents sat rigid beside him, their stiff silence a far cry from the fury they displayed the day before. The room fell silent as Principal Maddox stood. "Students, faculty, we are here to deliver the official ruling regarding the incidents involving Chase Barlow, his associates, and Zaria Coleman." A ripple passed through the crowd. Soft gasps, whispers, shifting chairs. Maddox adjusted his glasses, hands trembling slightly. After reviewing 6 months of security footage provided to us, as well as eyewitness accounts and personal testimony, the board has unanimously determined that Chase Barlow and his group have engaged in repeated, targeted acts of harassment, discrimination, and physical aggression. Students murmured in shock. Even those who already knew the truth felt a fresh jolt hearing it stated aloud. Chase tensed, his jaw tightened, his fists balled. Principal Maddox continued, voice firmer now. "As of today, Chase Barlow, Reed Marks, Mason Hale, Tyler Briggs, and Jax Carter are officially suspended for the remainder of the semester." Gasps erupted. Some students clapped under their breath. Others stared, wide-eyed. A few whispered, "Finally." Chase shot to his feet. "You can't do that!" he shouted, pointing at Zaria. "She attacked me. She used bees. How am I the only one getting punished?" His mother pulled at his sleeve, but Chase yanked away. "This is insane. I'm the victim here." Nobody responded. Nobody defended him. Not his friends, not the teachers, not even his parents. The district representative leaned into the microphone. "Mr. Barlow, please sit down. This board has made its decision." But Chase wasn't finished. He spun toward the crowd. "Why aren't any of you saying anything? You all laughed when she. Why is everyone suddenly against me?" The silence that answered him was a verdict of its own. Not one person stood to support him. Not one voice rose to defend his actions. The clips had shown everything. The truth had stripped away the myth of the untouchable athlete. The powerful boy standing above everybody else was suddenly very small. Zaria finally lifted her eyes to meet his. Chase froze. For the first time, he understood. He wasn't losing popularity. He wasn't losing reputation. He was losing power. Principal Maddox cleared his throat and added, "As for Miss Coleman, the board acknowledges her reaction was extreme. However, given the circumstances, ongoing harassment, racial targeting, documented assault, she will receive counseling sessions but no suspension. Her actions, while alarming, were provoked by documented abuse." Soft applause broke out. A teacher quickly shushed them, but the energy remained. Justice had landed. Principal Maddox closed the folder in front of him. "This hearing is concluded." Chase sagged backward into his chair, defeated. Zaria stood calmly, offering no triumphant smile, only a quiet strength. And then, Luther Coleman's voice echoed from the aisle. "Justice is only beginning." Hook delivered. The students in the auditorium buzzed with electricity. Phones were already out. Messages were flying. The news spreads across Crestwood High like wildfire, reshaping alliances, reputations, and the school's entire hierarchy. By the next morning, Crestwood High felt like a different universe. The campus buzzed with an energy so intense it seemed to shimmer in the air like lightning trapped inside every hallway, every classroom, every whispered conversation. It started on Crestwood Connect, the school's internal social network. Overnight, someone uploaded a compilation video. Chase's slap, Zaria's unflinching silence, the hive, the swarm, the disciplinary hearing. Within minutes, it hit 2,000 views. By lunchtime, 10,000. By the final bell, the entire school had seen it. Students huddled in groups across the courtyard, phones glowing like tiny screens of justice. The same phrases echoed over and over. She didn't even flinch. She stood up to Chase. She didn't let him get away with it. She exposed everything they covered up. Zaria moved quietly between buildings, trying to blend into the noise. But blending in had become impossible. Everywhere she went, heads turned. A girl from her English class approached shyly. I just wanted to say, thank you. For standing up. For all of us. A boy from the art club chimed in. Yeah, people have been scared of Chase forever. No one ever did anything. Compliments kept coming, echoes she never asked for, never expected, never intended. Zaria nodded politely, offering a small smile, but she felt the weight of it settling heavily on her shoulders. She hadn't done it to become a symbol. She had done it because she refused to be broken. But symbols were rarely chosen. They were made by those who needed them. By midday, a student-led initiative appeared on the school's online forum. Petition: Protect students from racial harassment and violence at Crestwood High. Within hours, hundreds signed. The comments section filled with testimonies, other students sharing experiences of bullying, some that had been buried for years. A group gathered near the fountain on the main lawn, holding signs hastily drawn on poster boards. We deserve safety. No more silence. Stand with Zaria. Zaria stood at the edge of the crowd, unseen for a moment. She watched as students chanted not for revenge, but for protection, for fairness, for a school that didn't ignore their pain. For the first time, she understood something. This wasn't just about her. This was bigger, wider, deeper. A movement had begun, but movements always came with pressure. Inside the main building, Principal Maddox observed everything from his office window. Exhaustion pulled at his face, but something else flickered beneath it: resolve. Embarrassment had shaken him, yes, but it also forced him to confront a truth he had avoided. Crestwood High needed change, and change needed leaders. He stepped away from the window and picked up the phone. Zaria had barely made it to her locker when the announcement crackled overhead. Zaria Coleman, please report to the principal's office. Students around her exchanged looks: curious, excited, confused. Yo, are they giving her an award? No way. Maybe they want her to help fix the system. Bet they're begging her to join the student council. Zaria closed her locker gently. Her heartbeat quickened, not in fear, but anticipation. Whether she wanted it or not, a door had opened. Principal Maddox sits Zaria down and offers her a position on the student council, changing her role in Crestwood High forever. The student council office smelled faintly of old books and lemon polish. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting long bands of gold across the polished table where Zaria now sat, awkward, quiet, uncertain. She had never imagined herself in this room, let alone being invited here by the principal himself. Principal Maddox stood beside her, hands clasped behind his back. The exhaustion from the past 2 days still tugged at his face, but there was clarity in his eyes, now determination sharpened by accountability. Zaria, he began gently, pulling out a chair beside her. Crestwood High is changing. Or, it needs to. And change requires voices from those who understand the harm our systems failed to address. Zaria looked up. Why me? Because you didn't just stand up for yourself, Maddox replied. You revealed a blind spot in our school. Your strength forced us to confront something we should have addressed long ago." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were outlines for new anti-bullying protocols, restorative justice initiatives, and diversity training programs. Zarya flipped through quietly, her throat tightening not from fear, but from gravity. He continued, "I want you to join the Student Council as a special advisory member on safety and equity. You would help shape policies, propose changes, hold us accountable." His voice lowered. "We need someone who sees things others overlook." Zarya exhaled slowly. It wasn't the role she asked for, but it was one she felt the weight of immediately. "Okay," she said quietly, "I'll do it." Maddox's shoulders relaxed. "Good. You'll make a difference here." But outside the office, the world was not so simple. Word spread within minutes. Zarya Coleman, new girl, target of bullying, the girl who unleashed a hive on Chase Barlow, was now joining the student council. The reactions were mixed. Some students cheered. "She deserves it. She's the only one who actually stood up to Chase. She'll fix things." Others were less generous. "Bruh, they're rewarding her for bringing bees to school? Must be nice to get special treatment." "She didn't earn that. She just went viral." The Razwai. Favoritism much? By midday, a quiet tension threaded through the hallways. People watched Zarya differently, not with mockery, not with admiration, but with calculation. Some whispered as she passed. Others stepped aside too quickly, unsure whether to fear her or follow her. Power always came with shadows. In the council office, Zarya scanned the documents again. She wasn't rattled, but she wasn't naive either. She knew this new role painted a target on her back. Principal Maddox seemed to sense her unease. "Listen," he said softly. "Leadership invites criticism, but your voice can help kids who've never had one." He held her gaze. "Don't let the noise distract you." Zarya nodded, though the knot in her stomach didn't loosen. As she stepped out of the office and into the hallway, she felt the shift immediately, eyes on her, whispers following, tensions coiling like invisible threads pulling tight. Then a scream, sharp, echoing. Not far away. Students turned toward the east wing. A few dropped their books. The panic in the air was immediate and familiar. Zarya froze, heart kicking into high gear. A strange incident unfolds in the hallway, threatening to derail everything Zarya has just been entrusted with. The scream drew Zarya instinctively toward the east hallway. Students clustered around the corner, their faces pale, their voices hushed and frantic. As she pushed through the crowd, she expected another act of bullying, another chase, another victim, another moment she'd be forced to intervene. But what she saw was something very different. 3 boys, not the old bully crew, but students she recognized from the sophomore class, were surrounding a terrified member of Chase's former group, Tyler Briggs. His back was pressed against the lockers, hands raised defensively. "You think you can get away with everything just because Chase got caught?" One boy snarled. "You're next," another hissed. "Payback time." Tyler shook his head violently. I didn't do anything. It was Chase. And you helped him." The third boy snapped, shoving him hard. The shove sent Tyler stumbling into the metal lockers with a loud clang. Students gasped. Others began recording. A few cheered quietly, feeding off the adrenaline of seeing a former bully terrified. For a split second, Zarya understood the anger. She understood the years of silence, fear, humiliation others had endured. She understood the temptation, how easy it would be to let the cruelty bounce back in the opposite direction. But she also understood something far more important. If she let this continue, Crestwood High wouldn't heal. It would simply flip the power dynamic, keeping the violence alive, repackaged under a different name. This wasn't justice. This was revenge wearing justice's mask. Zarya stepped forward. "Enough," she said, her voice low but sharp as broken glass. The 3 boys turned. Their expressions faltered when they saw her standing there, calm but radiating authority. She hadn't asked for authority they suddenly respected. "Zarya, come on," one boy scoffed. though his confidence wavered. They had it coming. Chase ruined people. We're just returning the favor. No, she said firmly. You're repeating the same cycle he started. He deserves it, another boy muttered, gesturing at Tyler, who trembled with sweat dripping down his chin. Maybe he does, Zarya replied, stepping between them. But that's not for you to decide. Not like this. The hallway quieted. Even the spectators lowered their phones. Zarya turned so her voice carried across the crowd. If we let violence answer violence, she said, then nothing changes. We don't rise. We don't heal. We become just like them. Tyler blinked, stunned. He looked at her as if he couldn't believe she was defending him after everything his group had done. The three boys exchanged uncertain glances. Zarya finished, her words steady, resonant. Only justice, not violence, breaks the cycle. Silence spread, thick and heavy. One by one, the boys stepped back, shame replacing anger. They retreated down the hallway without another word. The crowd slowly dispersed, unsure how to process what they had witnessed. Tyler swallowed hard. Why? Why'd you stop them, after what we did to you? Zarya didn't look at him directly. Because hurting you doesn't make me stronger. It just makes me another version of Chase. He lowered his gaze. As she walked away from him, the whispers started again, not hateful, not mocking, but confused, awed, uncertain. Zarya Coleman had become something no one expected. A moral compass, but compasses often face storms, and Crestwood High was not done testing her. Zarya braces herself because the final challenge is approaching, and the school is about to hear her voice one last time. The morning assembly gathered in the main hallway, the same hallway where everything began. Students lined both sides from end to end, filling the space with a quiet anticipation that felt almost sacred. Teachers stood along the walls, clipboards lowered, conversations hushed. The tension wasn't fearful this time, it was reverent. Principal Maddox stepped up to the podium set near the trophy case. His voice echoed through the corridor speakers. Today, we address the heart of who we are as a school, and there is someone who deserves the floor more than anyone. He turned slightly. Zarya, please come forward. A ripple spread through the crowd. Zarya Coleman stepped into view. For a moment, the hallway swallowed her in memory, the sting of humiliation, the roar of laughter, the slap that had echoed off these very lockers. But today, the air felt different. She walked with her shoulders back, her steps sure, her breath steady. She was no longer the girl trying to disappear. She was the girl everyone had come to hear. Teachers nodded as she passed. Students pressed themselves aside, forming a clear path. Her footsteps rang cleanly, confidently, through the space that once made her small. She stopped at the podium. Dozens of phones lifted, but no one was mocking. They were listening. Zarya took a breath, letting the silence settle. When I came to Crestwood High, she began, her voice steady, I thought the hardest part would be fitting in. I didn't realize the hardest part would be surviving the silence. Students shifted, eyes trained on her. Racism, she continued, doesn't always come as a shout. Sometimes it comes as a joke, a shove, a laugh that everyone pretends not to hear. She looked around the hallway, the scene of her worst moment. Sometimes it comes as a slap. A murmur rippled through the crowd, not of mockery, but recognition. I didn't stand up because I wanted to be brave, she said. I stood up because I had to, because if I didn't, the next person they made small might not stand back up at all. Her words hung in the air like weight. Zarya scanned the faces, freshmen, seniors, athletes, artists, kids who had been invisible for years. This school saw something ugly last week. And then it saw something powerful, the truth. It forced all of us to look closer, to see what happens when power goes unchecked. She paused, grounding her breath. But change doesn't come from fighting violence with violence. It comes from refusing to stay silent. It comes from choosing justice, even when it's hard. Even when you stand alone. Several students lowered their eyes, guilt and reflection stirring within them. And now, Zarya said softly, none of us stands alone. She stepped away from the podium. The hallway erupted not in chaos, but in applause. Thunderous, overwhelming applause that echoed through every corner of Crestwood High. As Zaria began her final walk down the hallway, students parted instinctively, not out of fear, out of respect. She passed the exact spot where Chase had slapped her. That day, she had swallowed the humiliation. Today, she walked through it like it held no power over her anymore. Whispers rose. She changed everything. She's the reason the school's safer. And quote, she didn't back down. She's brave. Zaria lifted her chin slightly, not in pride, but in acceptance of what she had become. A symbol she never asked for, but one the school desperately needed. At the doorway, she paused and looked back once. And that, she said quietly, was the day Crestwood High learned that no one has the right to stay silent in the face of injustice. A new beginning for Crestwood High. So in the end, the hallway that once swallowed Zaria's silence became the very place her power echoed the loudest. The bully who thought one slap could break her learned the hard way that consequences come with wings and stingers. But the real lesson? When you push the wrong girl, sometimes the universe hands her a hive. Now tell me, if you were standing in that hallway, whose side would you be on? If this story shook you even a little, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another twist just like this.